Okay, well, gentlemen, thank you for squeezing into our dais this morning. We greatly appreciate all four of you being present. Just for the edification of the panel members and anyone watching this, starting from the my left-hand side, we have Doug Herndon, who is currently the judge in District Court 3.
Yes.
We have John Watkins next to him. He is running for the seat, a vacant seat in District Court 2. We have Mike Davidson, who is running against Doug Herndon for the seat in District Court 3, And then on the end, we have Richard Scotti, who is also running for the vacant seat in District Court 2. Since I realize all four of you did receive the letter kind of informing you and giving you some background on AAG, I'll skip those, skip that information. Just for anyone else's edification as well, both District Courts 2 and 3 are courts of they handle jurisdictional matters involving civil and criminal cases. The civil cases will involve matters, generally speaking, in excess of $10,000. So, and they handle all jury trials, things of that nature. So, they do not. None of these gentlemen will be handling family court cases, assuming they are elected or re-elected, much to their chagrin. So. We will start, generally speaking, we all start from the left if there are no females on the panel. So we will start with you, Doug. Doug, why have you decided to run for re-election at this point in time and in this particular race? And obviously everyone else will have an opportunity to answer that same question.
Well, I've been a judge now for about 9.5 years. I was originally appointed by Governor Gwynn back in 2005 after going through the judicial selection process, and that came after spending 14 years as a trial attorney. I very much enjoyed the 9.5 years that I've spent on the bench. I don't perceive myself as being anywhere close to being done with what I decided to do when I sought a judicial appointment. My entire legal career has been spent within the district court system as a trial attorney and as a judge, kind of learning about and seeing what works and what doesn't work, what people's expectations are, how we can improve. Not just from an individual courtroom standpoint, but from the entirety of the judiciary, as well as how we work with the Department of Parole and Probation, the Public Defender's Office, the DA's Office, the Civil Bar, all of those things. And we've still got a lot of work to do. There are many things that are still facing the court system as we come off the end of the recession and the things that we've been able to do from a budget standpoint. Since I run the criminal division and serve on the court's executive board, I'm kind of probably even more familiar with than a lot of people on the bench are about the issues we face. And at the end of the day, I very much enjoy my job every day. I love being in court. I love presiding over trials, and I just very much want to continue doing that.
John, why'd you run for the seat in District Court 2?
Well, first off, John, it's my opinion that to be a judge is the pinnacle of a legal career. A judge is the keeper of the community. And this particular department has both civil and criminal. I've been a practicing lawyer for 34 years. I have extensive experience in both civil and criminal. I have also life experience. I'm not just a young guy. I also protected this flag up here. I was a colonel in the Nevada National Guard Reserve, and I believe wholeheartedly in the Constitution. And you know, John, I always carry my Constitution, and I didn't even leave it at home for this. This is a very important document. This is why we don't just behead people, we give them their day in court. One thing I can assure all you folks is that I would be fair. I've always been fair my entire life. And whether I'm endorsed or not, and I really want your endorsement, as I've been here before, you will be treated fairly regardless. I really find it very heartening for me that since I've been contrary to the police, in other words, on the other side, I have all the major police endorsements. I got the PPA, I got PPA civilians, I got the PPA supervisors, I got NAPSO. To me, that speaks highly that they must respect me, and I think you want somebody sitting in district court that has the utmost respect. I will not scoop to any negativism. In my campaign, you probably recall there was some negative things sent out on my behalf criticizing me because I'm a defense attorney, and I'm very proud to be a defense attorney. I used to be a former prosecutor under Bob Miller. I have the best experience for this department. I have everything. It's just like in the JAG program. You do defense work, and then you do the prosecution. I have all that. Also, I have extensive appellate experience. I've practiced before the United States Supreme Court. I've been to the Ninth Circuit Appeals over 20 times. I have now at least 46 report opinions out of the Nevada Supreme Court. And what's really important about all that, it helps a judge because now you can streamline your cases. You know what's admissible and what is not. Also, I care about people, and you people that know me know that. All those appeals I just mentioned, most of those were done pro bono. I did it for free because I care for people. And I have a lot of Asian friends, and I'm going to mention this also. I'm a Masonic brother, and I have a lot of Asian Masonic brothers as well. So I'm here to seek your endorsement, not to my own horn, but I'm the best candidate, and I'm going to win this race. I'm going to win this race because I have the endorsements. By the way, I have Oscar Goodman. I have former Sheriff Young. I have Dick Bryant. I have Stu Bell. These are some pretty powerful people that know John Watkins. So with that, I'm going to shut up.
Well, at least for now. Mike, why did you decide to run in District Court 3? Or for District Court 3, I should say.
In a very real sense, I've been training for this job for over 35 years. That's how long I've been practicing law in this community. This department, as you said, is a department that hears both civil and criminal cases. I'm the only one running in this race who actually has practiced law in both civil and criminal law. To me, one of the highest honors that I've ever received is the rating from Martindale-Hubbell as an AV preeminent lawyer. As the lawyers know, there are only about 5% of all of the lawyers in the country that get that rating. It can't be bought. It's given to you by the lawyers and the judges in your community who have seen the quality of your work and your ethics. I'm the only one in this race who comes close to that rating. I think it's important to actually have represented real live people at some time in your career if you want to be a judge. I think that unless you have experienced what people go through when they have cases pending in court, both on the civil side and on the criminal side, you can't possibly have a true understanding. Those of us who have reached a few years of age know that there's a difference between what you read and what you hear and what you actually experience. I think a judge needs to have the ability to understand viscerally from the inside, not just intellectually. And if you've never represented people, if you've never represented businesses, if you've never owned businesses, you can't possibly understand that. You can do a job from the intellectual perspective, but you don't have a true understanding. And so I'm running for judge because I think that at this stage in my career, after having been the assistant district attorney, I was the #2 guy in the office. I was the chief prosecutor in North Las Vegas. The Supreme Court of this state appointed me as a settlement conference judge. I was one of the original settlement conference judges. I've been a juvenile court pro tem judge. I've been a small claims judge. I've given you a resume that lists out all of my community activities. You'll see that I've won many awards for pro bono activity, for expertise in different areas. Those are things that people in the know in this community recognize. I think we can do better in Department 3, and that's why I'm running in this department. And I'm running because I have a commitment to this community. I've had for many decades, and it shows in the work that I've done in this community. This is where I can be of the most benefit using the experience and the knowledge that I've gained for the greatest number of people.
Okay. Richard.
Well, good morning, everybody. Richard Scotti, running for District Court Judge, Department 2. I'm very honored to be here. I'm very honored that before the primary, your organization chose to endorse me. I carried that endorsement very proudly, and it was very important to me. And I hope to earn your endorsement again. And I also have many endorsements from very influential and important people and groups in this community. But I want you to select me as the best person for this job now and endorse me because you find my qualifications to be superior and my background and education to be superior, not because someone else said that I'm superior. I also want you to know when I first graduated from Hastings Law School back in San Francisco in 1988, Hastings was the number 17 school in the country. I graduated in the top 10% of my class, and I've continued to work the hardest I can to do the best job I can for my clients and for the community. And Like Mr. Davidson here, I too am an AV rated lawyer, which is the highest rating a lawyer can get under the AV system, under the Martindale-Hubbell system for legal ability and ethics. I have served by appointment of the Nevada Supreme Court for 10 years as a Supreme Court settlement judge. I've served as an administrative law judge. I've served as a mediator for the foreclosure mediation program, which I was one of the original mediators appointed by Barbara Buckley for that program. I've served as a state agency prosecutor. I've served in all these capacities for many years, and I've also been appointed and elected twice by my peers to serve as a member of the Board of Governors of the State Bar of Nevada. So gentlemen and ladies, I know the law and I know how to run a courtroom from all of this experience. And I'm seeking election as a judge because I also know that in the Constitution of the United States, our preamble, it begins, "We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice." Establishing justice was one of the primary goals of our new government, and it would be the pinnacle of an honor to serve as your judge. I would appreciate your support. Richard Scotti, District Court Department 2. Thank you.
Richard, we'll start with you on this question and go back down the other way to keep things relatively fair.
Thank you.
There's been talk as of late, for the past several years, about the issues surrounding people running for judicial seats and receiving campaign donations from individuals who appear in front of them. Assuming you are elected, how do you plan on minimizing or avoiding the appearance of impropriety should one of your big campaign donors appear in front of you on an important case or an important motion? An important motion.
There's a couple ways of approaching that. First and foremost is you need to completely put out of your mind the amount of the donations that you receive from your supporters once your race is over. Because the amount of money that people have contributed, whether it's $5, $25, $5,000, is completely irrelevant. A judge needs to have, one of his most important values has to be fairness, and fairness comes from lack of bias or prejudice. And you need to make sure that you are endorsing a person that has a proven commitment to being unbiased and unprejudiced. And part of the AV rating helps demonstrate that you're obtaining one of those judges. Now, there's one exception to that rule of trying to completely put out of your mind the amount of the donations. If it's a particularly large donation, some judges use a rule of thumb of about $5,000. If it's a large donation like that, then you owe a duty to the litigants coming before you to identify the amount of the contribution that has been made and to assure that the litigants before you are comfortable with that, because they need to have comfort in the process. People don't always win, but people need to be assured that they're getting a fair process. And so if someone comes before me who's given me a very large donation, I don't know if 5,000 is going to be the benchmark, but I'm going to make a point, whatever that benchmark is, and I'll determine it after consulting with other colleagues and scholars and perhaps State Bar Counsel. I'll make sure I disclose that and ask if people want me to recuse myself. And of course I need to get the input of the Chief Judge on that. But aside from that, know this, I am confident that I have utmost ethics, and my AV rating has established that, and also my election by my peers to the State Bar Board of Governors has also established that.
Mike, before you answer, I apologize, I forgot to do this earlier. I have literally one case in front of Judge Herndon, but it is still an active case. It is awaiting sentencing. Because of that fact, while I'll be handling the moderation of the panel interview, I'm not going to, just to be fair to both of you, I'm not going to take part in the actual deliberations regarding the District Court 3 race. It's just, it's cleaner for all parties. Just so everyone knows, that case is, the District Attorney has stipulated to a particular negotiation in that matter, but just to avoid any much vaunted appearance of impropriety, I'm completely staying out of the deliberation aspect of this, just so you know that, and Doug, so you're aware of it also. And I'm sorry to interrupt, Mike.
I kind of figured that.
Yeah, but again, you've seen me in there, but Mike hasn't. So, Mike, assuming you're elected, what happens if you've been around the block for 3.5 decades? What happens? What are you going to do to avoid the appearance of impropriety should one of your old law partners or someone along those lines appears in front of you?
I like his answer. What Mr. Scotti said is correct. I would add that a judge has the obligation, as you said, to avoid not only actual bias, but the appearance of impropriety. There's always a tension for judges in determining when they have an actual bias or not, and each judge has to decide for himself or herself whether he or she can hear a case if that judge has some kind of contact with it. And of course, the financial impact is a very large one. Luckily in this state, people are limited as to the amount of money they can give to the $5,000 figure for a primary or for a general election, although of course corporations will often bundle their contributions. But I think the most important thing for any judge is to be transparent. You have to disclose if you have anything that could appear to be a conflict. That's the first step of the analysis. From there, you decide as a judge whether or not you think that you can be fair to all litigants. If you think in your heart of hearts that you can be fair, you have an obligation under case law and the codes to hear cases. If you think that you cannot be fair, you have an obligation to recuse yourself. Now, there's a large gray area, as Mr. Scotti talked about, where you may, after having disclosed to all of the parties, say, you know what, I think I can be fair as a judge, but I understand where you parties may think differently. And because the amount of the contribution was large enough for my involvement in the case, even if it's not financial, you talked about previous partners, if you think that it could appear to one party or the other, and it's not just the attorneys who are concerned about it, it's the parties themselves. Because you as an attorney may have an intellectual opinion as to whether this judge could be fair or not, but it's the party you serve who you have to think about. And so I, as a judge, after having made full disclosure, would say to the attorneys, take a moment and talk to your client. See whether or not the clients feel comfortable with me hearing this case. I would give great deference to the parties through their attorneys if they said, you know what, we think that this contribution is so large, or your involvement with these parties or these attorneys is so great that I don't think I'm going to get a fair shot. I think that's important. I would say one of the issues in this race, and I mentioned that we can do better in this department. The RJ did a survey, and in that survey they asked all the attorneys who appear in front of judges, should this judge be retained or not retained? In this department, 1 out of 5 lawyers, 20%, said no. Not he could do a better job, he shouldn't be retained. And when they asked and delved into the individual questions, one of the questions was, do you think this judge is biased? 1 out of 5 lawyers, 20%, said, yes, we think this judge is biased, and that's why we would not like to see him stay on the bench.
John.
If I may, John, first off, the Martindale-Hubbell, I'm also an AV permanent Martindale-Hubbell, and I want you to know that I also have a perfect 5. My opponent does not have a perfect 5. Even though he has the rating, he is not the highest. I have the highest, a perfect 5 in this particular race. Also, the Constitution allows for people to have a defense, and yet I got negative flyers criticizing me because I give people defenses. And I didn't get any calls saying this is not my position, so let's don't speak out of both sides of the mouth. Now getting to your question, there's no question. There's an appearance of impropriety when the judge gets money from people and he has that person before him in his court. There's no question there's an appearance of impropriety. And this is why it's important for you folks to pick someone with the integrity, the experience, someone who's able to put aside, okay, that appearance of impropriety and give a fair shake for everybody. That's what life experience does. That's what serving your country in the military, as I did as a colonel, does. It gives you integrity, okay? Also, if we can't allow the litigants to control whether you're going to hear the case or not based upon financial contributions, because now you're going to have chaos in the courtroom, okay? I love the transparency. People will know. However, when you sit as a judge, you have integrity. And that's what you good folks are all about, picking the person that you think has the integrity that's going to give you a fair shake. Thank you.
Doug.
Well, to begin with, I'm the only person here today that has been a judge, period. in a position in which you get rated, since Mr. Davidson brought up the rating issue. So what I can tell you is that the way I would address the issue of independence is the same way I've addressed it for 9.5 years, and I think done so in a very good way, and that's reflected in the ratings, and I'll speak to those in a moment. Back when I first got appointed, whether he was telling me the truth or not, Governor Gwynn made it a point after my appointment to call me up and chat with me, and he said, I want you to know something. I didn't go into the appointment process believing that I was going to appoint you. Both now Judge Williams and now Judge Johnson, who were the other two people that came out of the committee interviews with myself, had been through the process before, had been interviewed by him before, and he was familiar with that. And what he told me was that he had planned on appointing one of those two until he interviewed me. He said, so I want you to know something. You got this job because of your interview with me and the way you impressed me with the way you planned on going about being a judge. So don't ever believe that you owe anybody anything. Go into that job being independent. It wasn't because this person called or that person called or anything like that. Sure, people all contact the governor when the names come out of a committee interview, but he said, I want you to understand you got this job because of who you are. And I went about it from day one with that in mind, that people deserve to be treated fairly, to get prompt decision and reasonable, respectful justice regardless of who they are, what they are, where they've been, who they know, anything like that. And that's how I've done it since day one, and that's how I'm going to continue doing it even after a contested election. It doesn't matter. Nobody gets any better treatment because they've given a campaign contribution. The nature of judicial elections is that the legal community is who primarily contributes to judicial campaigns. I'm very proud of the fact that as a civil criminal judge, I have been receiving campaign support from plaintiff's personal injury bar, plaintiff's business bar from a civil standpoint, the civil defense bar, people who defend civil personal injury cases, criminal defense attorneys, support from prosecutors associations, everything across the board. Any area of law that can appear in the courts have been supportive of me. And in my mind, that tells me that they all trust that I'm doing a good job. I don't think, other than the occasional pro per criminal defendant, which John and John they'll always file pro per issues in cases, but it's very rare, if ever, that I can remember anybody's asked me to recuse off of a case. Now, I do exactly what each of these gentlemen are talking about. Sometimes you make disclosures, and it's usually based on an appearance of impropriety issue, not that you as an individual feel that you can't be fair. But you make that disclosure, and pretty much every time I've made that disclosure, the attorneys have still chosen to say, we want you to stay on the case, as opposed to taking their chances and going anywhere else. So I know that they trust me. The ratings that Mike's referring to when he says 1 out of 5 people are saying I shouldn't be retained, it's actually a little less than that. I think last time my rating was 81%. But here's what you need to understand about that. I have the highest career rating of any judge that'll be on the ballot this November. I have the highest career rating of any judge in the civil criminal division that's been on the bench as long as I have. I've been through 5 of those rating periods. Having an 81% rating this last time was substantially above the average. I mean, people are going to be displeased, and people hold on to that. I get that. I understand that. You're never going to have somebody that gets a 100% rating type thing. The nature of being a civil criminal judge is that you're going to be dealing with people's disputes. You're going to rule against people. You're going to issue decisions that they don't like. I understand that. I don't expect that everybody's going to like me, and I don't do my job trying to make everybody like me. I do my job to make sure that people feel like they had a fair shake, that I listened, that I was prepared, and I gave them a good decision. And I give them a basis for their decision if they want to appeal it as well. I don't just say your motion's denied, or your motion's granted, or your summary judgment request is denied, or your summary judgment request is granted. I tell them why I'm doing what I'm doing. That was advice that goes against what Stu Bell told me when I started, actually, since you mentioned Stu. He's like, don't give them any more information than they need, but I don't agree with that. I think you give them the information they need to know why you're ruling the way you're ruling, and so that they can move forward. And hopefully, once they understand that, maybe they don't appeal it. Maybe they're satisfied. They feel like they had a fair shaking for it. But at the end of the day, you have to go in every day understanding that it's your job to hear cases, not to find reasons to get off cases. There's a lot of political aspects to cases. There's a lot of high-profile cases. There's all kinds of things going on, but our job as an elected official in the judiciary is to hear the case that's assigned to you, not try and figure out how to get away from it because it involves a hot potato kind of decision. So I don't shy away from those things at all, and I maintain a very strong sense of independence in how I rule on things.
Okay. We're at about 25 minutes. Mike, I know you have a couple questions that you generally ask. I'm just going to take a break right now while you go at it.
You just mentioned Stubel, you know, because I just thought about it. About 20 years ago, I had a party at my house with Stubel, Jerry Keller, and Debbie Lippis, 20 years in 93.
Okay.
When you mentioned this,
Little deja vu.
that's a long time. But, you know, the other thing, you know, which I would like to ask you guys, you know, that we do events, you know, 2-3 events every year. Basically, the Judges' Night Out we do twice every 2 years, and we don't ask you to come. You know, we're not looking for you to come to all our events. At least once a year, you know, we event, support us, you know, for a fundraising event, like we got the awards coming up next month. And just show your face that you'll be there. Some of them, we don't see them till the election, you know, like one of the judges before I told her, I said, I haven't seen you for 5 years. Oh, Mike, shall I give you excuse? I don't want excuses. You know, you want our awards, you want support, because I don't know if you read the RG a few months ago, and those 2 articles came twice. They said most of the decisions people get elected is going to be because of the Asian community this year. The RG said that. I didn't see. You can look at the RG. And you know, we want to support our friends who have been good to us, come to all our events, and you know, they're just there for us. So want to be there. I need a commitment from you guys. You know, if you get elected and we support you, you just want to show up once a year. Awards at the Judges' Night Out every 2 years. Like we had a Judges' Night Out about 2-3 months ago, John.
Yes,
And,
June,
you know,
I want to say.
Yeah, we had commitment from 68 judges. You know, 50 only showed up. We can just give us a BS now. We're not looking for BS. If you commit, sure. Yeah, last week some things come up. You know, it's like that. Yeah. So that's what I need to commit to. We have an awards coming up. I appreciate you come there, get in the ad, help us out, because AG doesn't do just elections. Like this year, we're going to give 1,000 turkeys away. We're giving 10 scholarships, 10,000 each, $10,000. We give 1,000 toys away. So we have a lot of community activities we do also. That's what we are known for, not just election stuff. So we need to have your support for all our events.
Well, let me respond. I'm not a judge, so I haven't been invited to your things.
But you will be
when
invited.
I do become a judge, as long as you say you're serving kimchi, I'll be there.
Okay, sir.
Kimchi. Yeah. Good kimchi.
And so, Mike, how many times have you seen me at Harbor Palace for the events over the last how many years? And I remember being at your house, you and Rita, you know, hosted events, and I was there going back as far as, what, 2002. Stu Bell, of course, was and still is my partner. I think if you're an elected official in this community, you have an obligation to stay in the community. Just because you get elected doesn't mean that you go up into your white tower, shut the doors, and come out once a year when you need support. I don't know how you stay in touch with the community you're supposed to be serving and have a feel for the issues that are important to that community if you don't stay involved in the community. And so, I mean, I can speak from a lot of decades in this community of having participated in lots of events. Having been an appointed position judge for many years, I don't see any reason that's going to stop when I get elected to this position.
Richard.
I give you my commitment. I will remain involved and dedicated to the Asian American and Pacific Islander community. I recognize that they represent 10% of the residents here in Clark County, and they're 10% of the business owners here in Clark County, and Asian American and Pacific Islanders represent the largest class of immigrants at the present time. That we need to all have a strong commitment to making sure that we understand the 30 different countries that Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders are coming to, and the 100 different languages that they bring, the cultural diversity and the challenges that they face. And I will be there, and I will be committed. You can count on that.
Do you like kimchi?
I'd like, she's okay.
Well, Mike and I have obviously had a conversation about this, and he knows one of the things that I expressed that I agree with everybody to the extent that as an elected official you've got an obligation to be involved in the community as well. The problem becomes you can't do everything. And as the only one of us who's been in this job for 9.5 years as opposed to a private practice job, my first obligation is to my job and doing everything related to a job that you pay tax dollars for me to do the best that I can do. And then to figure out how to fit in everything else around that. I've been involved with teaching at the Rape Crisis Center for 18 years. I teach at the Gender Justice of Nevada facilities. I teach at UNLV. I am involved in UNLV's law school, judging mock trial programs and trial advocacy classes. I run a mock trial program for 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 8th graders where I wrote all those programs for them. I bring them in. I pay for everything for them to come in and take part in that process. I help Bishop Gorman's high school mock trial team, and these are mainly all after hours type things in the evenings during the year when they'll come over after court is done for the day. I serve on the board of trustees at the Meadows School, which takes up quite a bit of time as well. I run marathons to raise money for a cancer charity here in town. So you do all these things, and hopefully that you're reaching out into the community and affecting people from every type of cultural and religious background in certain organizations, and then you figure out when you can fit in these other things as well. Would I love to come to the AAG events 3 times a year? Absolutely.
No, once a year we're happy. Don't worry.
I'm talking about whether
like you
it's 3
said,
or 5 or
we talked
whatever
about
may
it.
be. No, I
We
know.
talked about once a year. If you come every event, you don't expect of you. You got family, you got it's like you gave me a list of stuff. But once a year,
I know.
appreciate come and support us. Get an ad.
I don't want to come to every AAG event, so I completely understand where you're coming from.
3 times or 5 times or 10 times a year. You'd love to go to all those things. I mean, you and I know we go back many years. I obviously enjoy your company. But whether it's AAG or being involved with any other organization that represents a certain cultural entity within the community or a religious area within the community, whatever it may be, you're trying to fit all these things in. The practical reality is you're not going to fit them all in. I'm just being honest with you. But that doesn't mean you maintain an attachment to an appreciation
Real quick.
for everybody within whatever organization they're involved in.
We're right at our time limit, but I think we have one really, really quick question. As if that's possible for all 4 of these gentlemen, with all due respect to
The
them.
reason I would like to ask this question is because there's 1 incumbent and 3 running. My question is, with the campaign contribution and everything, because of your disclosure, fairness, and no bias, no favoritism, and all that, to prevent all that, I mean, I'm sure all of you think you're the best lawyer based on your performance and all that, and et cetera, right? I'm not going to go do that. Based on that, to prevent all that, I would like to just ask this is just my opinion though, or I would like to have your opinion on this. I already asked this question though. But would you rather than having the pressure of running on the elections, and again, disclosures, campaign contribution, all that, would you rather be like appointed rather than run for an election?
I'll answer that first. Absolutely not. So when you have someone appoint, what happens, you get the good old boy syndrome, and you have a lot of that going on. We can never take away from the public their right to vote for the candidates, and when you do that, you are making a big mistake.
Okay.
We don't want the Missouri plan, because what happens once you're in, a lot of times you perpetuate, okay? And it's the good old boy syndrome to a degree. You want the individual citizen to vote, even though it's a pain in the neck to campaign, okay? Because I could be watching a Cardinal baseball game right now. I'm happy to be here. But anyways, that's my opinion.
Mike, Missouri Plain.
I have been on both sides of this question more than anybody at this table. I've come through the judicial selection process 4 times on the state level. Every time I've applied, I've been recommended for appointment. In fact, the last time I was recommended for both open departments. I have come through the federal appointment process twice. I've been recommended for appointment for United States Magistrate Judge twice. I've run campaigns. I have to tell you honestly, I don't know what the right answer to this question is. I'm torn. Asking people for money is the most hateful thing that I ever do running for office. I don't like it, and I wish we didn't have to do it. I also think that John is right, that there's great power in the electoral process. And I also think that it is unlikely that the people of this state are going to vote to give up the right to vote, which is what they're going to have to do for us to go to a different plan. And so I'm torn between the two. There are disadvantages to both systems. I've seen them in operation. I'd like to take the money and the politics completely out of the process. You know, we have a process that when we fill an open seat, there's a vetting process, there's a recommendation by a commission, and then 3 names get sent to the governor. I'm not sure why the governor is better off to make that pick. The commission right now is made up of half people who are appointed by the governor, half by the state bar, and it's chaired by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. If we're trusting them to vet the candidates, why don't we trust them to make the appointment instead of making it overtly political by kicking it back to a governor? Now, I've been of a different political party than every governor, you know, that has had my nomination in front of him. Does that have something to do with it? I don't know. The governor may have just picked the person that he thought was the best candidate. But I don't know why there has to be politics in the process. I would prefer to come up with a system that we take the politics and the money both out of the system.
Richard.
Thank you. Our founding fathers saw fit to require that our federal judges be appointed. So they saw merit in that system. And they left it up to each state to uniquely determine their own system for election of the state court judges. So they recognize that there's different systems for different states depending on what the policymakers feel is best. Now, our policymakers here in Nevada have determined that we have all of the judges running all at the same time now, and it's going to be every 6 years. So the greatest flaw in our system now is not necessarily that it's a democratically elected system, but we're asking the public to have too much information to consider and too many people to evaluate. It's just too much of a burden for our electorate. And it puts a burden on us to reach out to the 804,000 active registered voters we have. So that is a flaw in the system. I'm not sure what the answer is, to tell you the truth, but there is improvements we can make, both in informing the public and in eliminating the appearance of impropriety due to the campaign contributions.
Doug, finish us up.
I would favor something that has an appointment and an election process to it, and I say that for a variety of reasons. To begin with, through the appointment process, for those of you that don't know, part of the committee is made up of people that are from the public that aren't in the legal profession, business owners, whatever it may be, as well as then some attorneys and the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. And there's a pretty lengthy application process and then an interview process. So they're examining everything when you go through that application process, from your work history, your health, I mean everything back to where you've lived for the last 25 years and back to high school and beyond. And then they examine notable cases that you may have been involved in certain fashions, and they go through and they interview you and they come up with recommendations. And I think it's good to have the two levels of that. The committee comes up and whittles it down to 3 people, and they submit those to the governor's office, which does its own independent evaluation and investigation and solicits information from the public and the bar, and then they make those appointments. The reason I favor that as the initial way to put judges into office, I can tell you that I have had more conversations than I care to count during just this election year, where members of the public have said to me that they don't want to vote on the judicial races because they don't feel like they can learn enough information, and every judge in the district court is on the ballot this year, and we can't learn about you as judges, and this process is very flawed, and I feel like my vote is meaningless if I can't learn about it. And what they inevitably tell me is that they sure don't want to give up their ability to get rid of us, but they just don't think they have enough information to put us in on the front end. And the process that's kind of being proposed is just that you don't lose your vote, but your vote is to get rid of a bad judge. And that there would be some types of reviews that would take place so that information would be given to the public before a retention election so they could decide whether to keep you in office or not. And that if you didn't do a good job and you didn't earn the ability to stay there, you're going to get kicked out of office in that vote, and then the process would start over to put somebody else back in that at least has had that preliminary vetting and screening from a group of people to make recommendations. I don't favor the federal system where you're appointed for life. That idea I don't like. I think you earn your job every day that you're on the job.